My name is Laura Mackenzie, and the ICE agent's elbow smashed into my face at the Greyhound bus station in Laredo, Texas, driving my head back into the concrete pillar behind me. The impact was devastating. I felt my nose break instantly, heard the cartilage crunch, tasted blood flooding my mouth. My vision went white for 3 seconds before training kicked in and kept me conscious. I slid down the pillar, legs buckling, hands instinctively going to my face. Blood poured through my fingers, hot and copper bright, dripping onto the dirty terminal floor. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard shouting, felt hands grabbing my arms, heard someone yelling about resistance and obstruction. Stay down. The agent, his name tag read Morrison, pressed his knee into my back, forcing me flat against the grimy tile. I wasn't resisting. I was bleeding and dazed, and trying to breathe through a shattered nose. But Morrison had already committed to his narrative, already decided I was a threat that needed to be neutralized with maximum force. The Greyhound station was chaos, always was, especially at the Laredo terminal, just miles from the border. Families waiting for buses, travelers sleeping in plastic chairs, vendors selling food from carts, and ICE agents, always ICE agents, conducting their routine checks that were anything but routine. 21 years in the Army taught me how to take damage, how to stay functional when your body wants to shut down. I turned my head to the side, spitting blood, and managed to rasp, "I'm a U.S. citizen. You have no cause." Morrison's knee pressed harder. "Shut up. You ran when we approached. That's probable cause." I hadn't run. I'd walked away when he demanded my papers without identifying himself, without showing credentials, without any legal basis for the stop. I'd exercised my constitutional right to refuse an unlawful detention. Apparently that qualified as running in Morrison's playbook. His partner, younger, visibly uncomfortable, crouched next to my head. "Ma'am, if you just cooperate." "I am cooperating," I wheezed. "I'm lying here bleeding while your partner commits assault." "You escalated the situation." I walked away. "That's not escalation. That's exercising my rights." Through my blurred vision, I could see phones appearing. A woman with 2 children recording from behind a vending machine. A college kid filming from the bathroom doorway. An elderly man with his phone held high, live streaming probably, his face grim. Good. Let them see what routine immigration enforcement looked like when agents decided rights were optional. What Morrison didn't know, what he couldn't have known because I was dressed in civilian clothes with a backpack and bus ticket, was that the woman whose face he'd just smashed into concrete wasn't some undocumented traveler he could brutalize without consequences. The blood on his uniform wasn't from a powerless victim. It was from a full colonel in the United States Army, and his career had about 3 minutes left. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how we ended up here, you need to understand why I was in the Laredo Greyhound station at all. I grew up in West Texas, in a small town outside El Paso, where the border wasn't a political talking point. It was geography. My father was a rancher. My mother taught elementary school. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. White, English-speaking, third-generation American. The kind of background that should have meant I'd never face what happened in that terminal. But the border doesn't care about your ancestry when you're a woman traveling alone in South Texas. I joined the Army at 18, driven by 9/11 and a sense that service mattered more than safety. Did ROTC at Texas A&M, got commissioned as a second lieutenant, deployed to Afghanistan at 23, led a platoon through Helmand Province, made decisions that saved lives and decisions that still wake me up at 3 a.m. I climbed ranks through competence and refusing to quit when superior officers suggested, politely, that combat command wasn't optimal for women. Made captain at 28, major at 33, lieutenant colonel at 37. Last year, at 39, I pinned on full colonel Eagles. 21 years of service, multiple combat deployments, a Bronze Star from a firefight outside Kandahar where I'd pulled 3 wounded soldiers to safety, a Purple Heart from shrapnel that still set off metal detectors. I'd proven myself 1,000 times over, earned my place through blood and competence, and none of it mattered to Agent Morrison, who saw a woman traveling alone near the border and decided that was sufficient cause for violence. I'd been visiting my mother in El Paso. She was recovering from surgery, needed help around the house. I'd taken 2 weeks leave, driven out, helped her navigate physical therapy and grocery shopping and all the small tasks that become impossible after a hip replacement. When it was time to return to Fort Hood, my truck wouldn't start. Dead battery, then the starter went. Then the mechanic found 3 other problems that would take a week to fix. I needed to be back for a briefing Monday morning, so I did what thousands of Americans do every day. I bought a Greyhound ticket, El Paso to Fort Hood with a transfer in Laredo. 8 hours total. Should have been routine. I dressed for comfort. Jeans, a plain t-shirt, hiking boots. Pulled my dark hair into a ponytail. Carried a backpack with a change of clothes, my laptop, and my military ID buried in my wallet, along with my driver's license and credit cards. The El Paso to Laredo leg was uneventful. I slept most of the way, wedged against the window, ignoring the crying baby and the man snoring across the aisle. Arrived in Laredo around 7 p.m., had 2 hours before my connection to Fort Hood. The Laredo terminal was exactly what you'd expect. Tired, overcrowded, smelling of exhaust and industrial cleaner. I bought coffee from the vending machine, found a seat near the restrooms, pulled out my laptop to review briefing materials. That's when I noticed them. 2 ICE agents working the terminal, stopping travelers at random. Not random, actually. Targeted. They stopped anyone who looked Hispanic, anyone traveling with minimal luggage, anyone who fit their profile of suspicious. I watched them detain a woman with 3 children, demanding papers while the kids cried. Watched them corner 2 teenage boys, searching their bags while other passengers pretended not to see. Watched them operate with the casual cruelty of people who'd learned they could act without accountability. I kept my head down, focused on my laptop. I was white, English-speaking, clearly middle class based on my clothes and gear. I should have been invisible to their profiling. But then Morrison looked my way, saw me watching, saw me witness what they were doing, and he decided I was a problem. He approached directly, his partner trailing. "Ma'am, I need to see identification." I looked up from my laptop. "For what purpose?" "Routine immigration check. This isn't the border. You need reasonable suspicion for a stop." His eyes narrowed. "You refusing to cooperate with a federal agent? I'm asking for legal justification for the stop." "That's not refusal. That's exercising my Fourth Amendment rights." "Ma'am, if you're here legally, showing ID shouldn't be a problem. If you have legal cause for the stop, articulating it shouldn't be a problem." His partner shifted uncomfortably. "Morrison, she's got a point. We don't have specific, I've got cause." Morrison's jaw tightened. "She's acting suspicious, watching our operations, potentially interfering with federal enforcement. Watching isn't interference, and potential crimes aren't probable cause. Stand up, hands where I can see them." This was the decision point. I could have complied, could have shown my ID, proven I was a citizen, a colonel, someone with more authority than he'd see in his career. But compliance wouldn't change what he was doing to the others in that terminal. It would just confirm that his tactics worked. So I closed my laptop, packed it carefully into my backpack, stood slowly, deliberately, and said, "I'm not showing you ID without legal cause. If you want to detain me, you'll need to articulate reasonable suspicion of a specific crime. That's obstruction. That's constitutional law. Look it up." I picked up my backpack, slung it over my shoulder, and walked toward the exit. Not running, not fleeing, just declining to participate in an unconstitutional stop. Morrison grabbed my arm. "Where do you think you're going?" "Outside. I'm not under arrest. I'm not being detained on legal grounds. I'm leaving." "You're not going anywhere." I pulled my arm free, not aggressively, just firmly, and kept walking. That's when Morrison escalated. He moved fast, closing the distance, his elbow coming up in a strike that was pure aggression, no restraint, no control. His elbow caught my face, full force, driving my head back into the concrete pillar with enough violence that people screamed. I went down hard, blood exploding from my shattered nose, the world tilting sideways. Then his knee was on my back, his weight crushing, his voice yelling about resistance that existed only in his imagination. Now, lying on the terminal floor with blood pooling under my cheek, I heard running footsteps, multiple pairs, heavy boots on tile. What the hell is this? The voice cut through Morrison's shouting like a blade. Morrison's knee lifted slightly. "Sir, subject was fleeing detention, resisting." "Fleeing? She's bleeding on the floor." The new voice was closer now, authority radiating from every word. "Get off her. Now." Morrison hesitated, then stood. I rolled onto my side, coughing blood, my vision still blurred, but functional enough to see Supervisory Special Agent David Reyes standing 3 feet away, his face showing the kind of cold fury that comes from watching subordinates destroy everything you've tried to build. Reyes crouched next to me, careful not to touch, assessing the damage. "Ma'am, don't move. We're calling an ambulance." "Don't need one," I managed through the blood. "Need your agent arrested for assault." "Ma'am," he smashed my face into a pillar. No warning, no cause, no legal detention. I spat blood. "That's assault under color of authority." Reyes looked at Morrison, who was trying to explain himself to the partner who'd already taken 3 steps away. "Agent Morrison, what was your reasonable suspicion for this stop?" She was acting suspicious. Specifically, watching our operations, refusing to show ID, fleeing when approached. She walked toward the exit after declining an unconstitutional stop. That's not fleeing. Reyes's voice was surgeon precise. "What was your reasonable suspicion that she specifically had committed an immigration violation?" Morrison's face flushed. "She was in a border terminal. So were 100 other people. What made her specifically suspicious?" "She was." Morrison stopped, realizing the trap. Any answer he gave would be either profiling or admission of no cause. "She was what?" Reyes pressed. "White? English-speaking? Traveling alone? Which of those is reasonable suspicion of an immigration violation?" The terminal had gone silent. Every passenger, every employee, every witness watching the supervisor dismantle his agent's justification in real time. "I need to see your identification," Reyes said to me, his tone gentler. "Not for detention, for the incident report." I reached for my backpack, moving slowly, my hands shaking from adrenaline and pain. Found my wallet, pulled it out, flipped it open. Reyes looked at my driver's license first. Laura McKenzie, Texas resident. Okay. Then his eyes moved to the card behind it, my military ID. His expression changed instantly. "Oh, Christ." "What?" Morrison moved closer, trying to see. Reyes held up the ID so Morrison could read it. "Colonel Laura McKenzie, United States Army." The color drained from Morrison's face. She can't be. Can't be a colonel because she's a woman, or can't be a colonel because that would mean you just assaulted a superior officer." Reyes stood, and despite being shorter than Morrison, he somehow seemed larger. "Either way, you're done." Morrison looked around desperately, seeking support. His partner was already walking away, phone to his ear, probably calling the union rep. The passengers were still filming, their phones capturing every word. "This is bullshit," Morrison said, but his voice had lost its edge. "How was I supposed to know she was military? She's not in uniform." "You weren't supposed to know. You were supposed to have legal cause before you smash someone's face into concrete." Reyes pulled out his radio. "I'm calling local PD. This is assault, and it's going on record." "You can't. I was doing my job." "Your job is immigration enforcement, not random violence against citizens." Reyes looked at me, still bleeding on the floor. "Ma'am, I need you to stay still. Head injuries. I've had worse. Fallujah, 2008. IED took out our convoy. This is mild." I touched my nose carefully, assessing the damage. "Broken, but not displaced. I can reset it myself." "Ma'am, with respect, you need medical." "What I need is your agent arrested. What I need is a full investigation into the operations in this terminal. What I need," I paused, spitting more blood, "is accountability." Reyes nodded grimly. "You'll get it." The Laredo police arrived within minutes, followed by an ambulance I didn't need, but accepted because protocol mattered for the incident report. The paramedics reset my nose. I'd been right, clean break, no surgery required, and documented every injury with photographs that would haunt Morrison's legal defense. At the hospital, they x-rayed everything, confirmed concussion protocol, gave me painkillers I wouldn't take because I needed to stay sharp. While I sat in the ER with ice on my face, my phone started buzzing. The videos had gone viral. Multiple angles of Morrison's attack, my calm refusal to show ID without cause, the moment Reyes saw my military credentials, ICE agent assaults Army colonel in Greyhound terminal was trending on 3 platforms. My commanding officer called. "Colonel Mackenzie, what the hell happened?" I explained. Briefly, factually, leaving out nothing. Long silence. Then, "You're on medical leave effective immediately. And ma'am, when you're ready, Public Affairs wants a statement. This is national news." "Sir, I'd rather not." "Understood, but the story's out there. Better it's accurate." He was right. By morning, the narrative was already splintering. Some outlets focused on Morrison's violence, others on my refusal to show ID. Conservative media framed it as Colonel refuses lawful order. Progressive media called it textbook police brutality. Nobody seemed to grasp the actual point, that constitutional rights aren't optional based on an agent's convenience. I gave one interview to a military news outlet that understood context, explained that I'd refused ID not because I was hiding anything, but because Morrison had no legal cause for the stop. That compliance with unconstitutional demands doesn't make them constitutional. The response was explosive. Veterans organizations rallied. Civil rights groups filed complaints. The Department of Justice announced an investigation into ICE operations in South Texas. Morrison was terminated within a week. The Laredo field office was placed under oversight. Reyes was promoted for his handling of the incident. But the real change came from an unexpected source. The teenage boys Morrison had detained earlier, the ones I watched him search, came forward with their own story. U.S. citizens, traveling home from visiting family in Mexico, stopped and searched solely because they were Latino. Their video had been recording too, showed Morrison's pattern: systematic profiling, aggressive tactics, constitutional violations repeated across dozens of stops. The Justice Department's investigation expanded, found years of civil rights violations, unreported complaints, a culture of impunity that had rotted the Laredo operation from the inside. 3 months later, I testified before Congress, sat in a hearing room and told my story to representatives who'd spent careers defending tough enforcement without asking what that meant on the ground. I showed them my military ID next to the photo of my broken, bloody face, asked them how 21 years of service in combat zones hadn't made me American enough to ride a bus without being assaulted. Some apologized, some made excuses, some insisted Morrison was an isolated case. So I played them the compilation video, Morrison's pattern over 6 months, compiled from security footage and passenger videos. Dozens of stops, hundreds of violations, a systematic operation built on profiling and violence. The room went quiet. Policy changes came, not enough, but something. Body cameras required, stricter oversight, independent review of complaints. The Laredo terminal operation was completely restructured. Morrison tried to sue me for defamation, claimed I'd weaponized my rank to destroy his career. His case was dismissed in preliminary hearing after the judge watched the videos and asked his lawyer if he was serious. Last I heard, Morrison was working as a bouncer in Austin, still bitter, still convinced he'd done nothing wrong. My nose healed crooked. They'd reset it, but combat injuries don't heal perfectly. I kept the scar, reminder of the cost of asserting rights in a country that treats them as negotiable. 6 months after Laredo, I received a letter from one of the mothers whose detention I'd witnessed. Her children had been terrified by Morrison's aggression, traumatized by watching armed men search their bags. She wrote, "Thank you for not staying silent. My kids saw you stand up. Now they know they can too." That letter sits on my desk. Reminder that sometimes standing up means getting smashed down first. But the getting up matters more than the staying down. My name is Laura Mackenzie. I'm a colonel in the United States Army with 21 years of service. And I learned that constitutional rights aren't self-enforcing. They require people willing to assert them, even when assertion costs blood. They'll always assume authority justifies violence, that badges override rights, that compliance is mandatory regardless of legality. Right up until a supervisor sees your ID and realizes the person they just assaulted outranks everyone in the building. And sometimes, that moment goes viral enough to change policy. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough that the next colonel, or the next mother with scared children might ride a bus without being profiled. That's not victory, but it's something. And sometimes, something is all you get before you buy another bus ticket and keep moving forward. Because staying silent was never an option. Not in Laredo. Not anywhere. Not as long as agents like Morrison think violence is just part of routine enforcement.